Hello, I'm Rick Schildhouse, and because things on the internet seem to lose their date references pretty easily, today is Thursday, September 28th, 2023. On Sunday, September 17th, 2023, we visited the Frontier Homestead Museum in Cedar City, Utah, which is in Iron County, Utah. I'm not sure I have the full name correct, but it's the Frontier Homestead Museum Park. And it appears to be the combination of two or more museums. The second one being something like the Iron County Museum. The signage lists those two names or very similar to that, and they're in their presentations. So it has me minorly confused, but on the internet it's the Frontier Homeland Museum. Interesting place. It was the end of our day. It was the second major stop that we had made in our transit from Salt Lake City through the Bingham copper mine, where we spent several hours, and then a 3-hour drive, I guess it was, down into Cedar City. Interesting museum. Inside, the signage is pretty darn good. Besides having QR codes, it has an interesting thing where it gives you a telephone number and an extension, and we didn't try it. My cell phone batteries were dying, and evidently you call the telephone number and then dial an extension, and it tells you information about the display you're at, the presentation you're at. Kind of interesting. A fair amount of things in the museum. As a general rule, inside the museum, really nice signage. Outside the museum, not so good, but interesting. So, well worth the trip. Plan on 2 to 2.5 hours if you're interested in the Old West, the development of Utah, and how the Church of Latter-day Saints played into it, because a lot of the information there is related to the LDS Mormon Church. Let's get on with it. Hope you enjoy it. This is the sign in front of the Frontier Homestead State Park Museum in Cedar City, Utah. This museum complex seems to be the combination of two museums, the Frontier Homestead State Park and something along the lines of Iron County Museum. And Cedar City is in Iron County, Utah. This is the mural that's on the side of the museum building itself, which is really nice. And it's a big parking lot, free parking lot. And in front of this are a couple of things that kind of caught me by surprise for Homestead State Park. One of them is an ore shovel, and then you find out that the mining of ore in this county for Utah was a major factor. So you get to climb around this huge shovel, and you get to go inside and take a look at it. And it's kind of interesting. Never been inside of one before, so I think some of the stuff has been removed. And parked in front of the shovel is a Southern Pacific caboose. Now, the Southern Pacific played a role in Cedar City in the fact that it had a subsidiary company called something about the Utah Tourist Company or something like that, and they ran tours around the area. This is also in front of the museum. It's a man-powered crane, and it would be an excellent tool to teach kids how levers work, because you can move that almost horizontal post left or right so that you could put a man at the end of this or two men at the end of this and lift up heavy objects over on the other side. And the principles of laws and arms versus weight would be fantastic. So there's multiple sections to this museum. This is one of the pieces of iron that's parked out in front of it. It's a plow that looks like it's designed to be pulled by a tractor. I'm going to guess that it's to be pulled by a tractor in this case. Might not be, since that long handle goes out in front, but I suspect it's for a tractor. And so the three parts to the museum are the front, the building itself, and then what's behind it. Through the visual through this presentation, I'm going to be jumping around all over the place because I tried to group the photos by category. And in front of the building is about 6 or 7 various pieces of iron with absolutely no labeling on them, which is kind of disappointing because I kind of want to know what they are. There is a small admission fee, and if you're a veteran or active duty military, there is a discount to take advantage of. And one of the very first presentations that we walked into was this presentation, Frontier Necessities, and it was firearms. And it talks about the various types of firearms that were in use. Scatterguns, shotguns were a principal tool. Rifles were more common than handguns or pistols. And really nice, there were a number of weapons on display, and every one of them properly labeled, which was nice. And one of the things that they had inside was this presentation on the Utah Parks Company. Utah Parks Company was a subsidiary of the Union Pacific Railroad, or they operated it. They ran the concessions. They had lodges, which you didn't stay in. You stayed in cabins off on the side, or you stayed in a tent. The lodges were where you got meals, convenience stores, novelty shops, meeting rooms. The second story of them were frequently dormitories for girls. And there was a number of displays associated with this program, and it took you on tours in the area. The railroad, the Union Pacific, played a major role in bringing people and materials to the Utah area and to taking the products that Utah produced out. The sheep camp was outside in the back, and it had this rather large building, which was kind of interesting. And they showed you how the sheep were sheared. And overhead, if you look in on the interior shot here, that's the power bar that powered all the shears. So you had one motor, one engine at one side that ran this in this bar, and then pulleys and belts propelled the hand shears. And our daughters raised sheep in the 4-H program, and we used to shear them by ourselves. Sheep are kind of fun, interesting. We had a goat that taught the sheep what to do and how to do it. Sheep aren't sheep. Sheep need a goat. Sheep farming, sheep ranching, whatever you want to call it, sheep herding was a significant factor in the development of the Cedar City area. And sheep, not only do you get meat, but you get the wool off of them. And there are displays inside the museum about that. In the back of the museum, the outside area, is this wagon shed, and the wagon shed has numerous wagons in various states of decay, various states of neglect, and it's kind of interesting to see what their basic shape was, how they were formed, whatever. Inside, which we'll stop in on, were wagons, carriages, coaches in much better condition. We're going to step inside and see some of the coaches, wagons, whatever, that are inside that are in really nice shape. This mountain wagon is set up to be pulled by 2 horses. Doesn't look all that sturdy, but it sure does look nice. The next one we look at is the Clarence, which is very elegant, and there's a really good write-up on all these coaches. So this particular Clarence was built in Quincy, Illinois, and my wife and I are both from Illinois, from Chicago. Really nice looking coach. The Overland Stage kind of took some wear and tear. You would have expected that, but this represents what the original stagecoaches that opened up Utah were. The Concord Stage, much better condition, shown in Wells Fargo, probably sponsored. Really nice, and very proudly marking that it's U.S. mail. They had this poster from the Iron Mission Overland Stage Company, which Iron Mission is frequently mentioned around here, and it's the Iron County in Utah. Interesting rates, interesting rules of the road. And then they had this casting up on the wall of a carriage that doesn't look like a stagecoach. I was impressed by the signage overall. Outside, they were a little lacking. Inside, it was really good. This particular coach was owned by Joseph F. Smith, he was president of the Church of Latter-day Saints, big in Utah, obviously the Mormons, and it is an absolutely beautiful work of art. This beautiful red coach, which is obviously a high sitter, take a look at how high the seats are above the ground. I found no signage on it, but it was a beautiful work of art. I had a couple of pictures of it. And then the express wagon. This is a work wagon. This is a heavy work wagon. This is what you see in the westerns, being pulled by horses or by oxen, by mules. In most cases where the museum has done restoration, repair, replenishment, whatever you want to call it, primarily restoration, replacement of broken parts, missing parts, they get very detailed. On the Green Meanie, it is extremely detailed as to what they did to restore this, and they did an absolutely beautiful job. Water is heavy. Water is about 8 pounds per gallon, and the building of this water wagon shows that it is a heavy hauler. The wheels are wide, the wheels are heavy, it's heavily sprung, and it's carrying a lot of weight. I would hate to be the team of horses that pulled this. This was probably pulled by 4 horses. The delivery wagon. Delivery wagons are built for the purpose that they're going to do. This one here says it's built for ice, so it's probably insulated to some degree, according to the signage, and the actual one says dairy. I suspect it was insulated too. I like learning things, and this one, sorry for the blurred picture of the signage for this. This is a hearse, and it explains that white hearses were used for children, black hearses were used for adults. It explains that over the years, from 1600 on, hearses got more and more elaborate as they went. And then we come up to the piano box buggy, which was really kind of cool. This is the buggy that I would associate was being used by a doctor, and it's from Evansville, Indiana. The Surrey, which shows up in a number of Western movies, and it just looks like one of those coaches that you would want to have 2 beautiful horses in front of and go out and pick up your girlfriend and take her out for a picnic. I love the fringe factor on the top of it. My wife happens to love it too. And then we step off into more outside display stuff, and Weed 'em and Reap, and they're talking about, in particular, wagons. We're going to look at tools that are out here, and basically, unfortunately, it is rusting steel that needs signage. Back inside, because I tried to sort these to some logical order in my files and my directories. There were a number of saddles on display. There wasn't any signage that I saw associated with them, but saddles are made for particular purposes, and one of them that caught me of interest, because I'd never seen one displayed in a museum before, saw one in an antique shop, was a side saddle. We were there to learn things. I like learning things. One of the secondary buildings has the exhibit about the blast furnace that operated there, and it talks about how to build a blast furnace, talks about the items that go around it, the things that you need to put into it, and how iron ore and castings of iron helped promote the development of the area of Cedar City, to the point that Cedar City is in Iron County, Utah, so it's a major factor. And interesting display. The diorama is how it was laid out originally, during its development, and how they got the money. It was pretty interesting display. And they are preserving history. So here's Nathaniel West Pryor's captain's chair, And if you haven't picked up on the nomenclature of chairs, if it has armrests and it's at a table, it's a father's chair. If it has armrests and in an office, it's a manager's chair. This is obviously called a captain's chair for whatever reason. But if they have armrests, they're positions of elevation. If they don't have armrests, then they're the normal peon worker guys. Because sheep played a major role in the area, you would naturally find looms. There were a couple of really nice looms put up here. I'd like to get a loom just to try and do it. The Antique Gas and Steam Engine Museum in San Marcos or Vista, California, has an entire barn, a huge barn associated with looms. And there's a spinning wheel on display as well. The Hunter House is a very large house that's on display in the area, and it is open. You can tour it. I'm going to walk you through. I won't cite all of the rooms we walk through, but you can walk through this and see a lot of this area. Very little of it's actually fenced off or roped off, so you can't walk in there. They just ask you not to play with the toys that are in the place, and very informative. They also have on the write-up what it took to move the building from where it was to where it is now, and how the building developed along the way, because it started out a small structure, and then as the Hunter's family grew, so did the building. The signage associated with the Hunter House talked about how the area developed. And initially, when you go in, if you don't have support such as the railroad, you don't have commonly used, extensively used trails and paths for wagons, you end up using the area's natural resources. But you need materials, you need craftsmanship, you need tools. And as the Union Pacific Railroad came in, Transcontinental Railroad not only brought people, but brought materials, brought in more tools, so the area developed. One of the other buildings in the back of the museum is the Deseret Schoolhouse. Deseret is associated with bees, the Beehive State, Utah, and there is a school bell there. You walk in and the board is up there, the blackboard is up there. Remember that they usually use slates at that point in time. There's a sign up there about the alphabet that Brigham Young tried to get initiated, and it didn't quite work out. There's also a presentation of teacherage, and teacherage is, instead of having the schoolmaster move from house to house, staying with people on a temporary basis and having all those complaints, you build him either his own house, or you put the schoolmaster above the school, which is what they did here, which was kind of nice, and there's an article about it. I will tell you the stairs getting up to the teacher's area of the building were steep, and you hit your head going up there. Interesting construction, really nicely done. A beautiful log cabin. In their effort to educate and make people knowledgeable about the area they're in, they have a line shack, another one of the buildings out in the back, and this one was built about 1945, and it was built as shelter for the people who were maintaining the telephone wires coming through the area. It went out of usage. It was bought by somebody else and then brought down and donated to the Iron Mission State Park. And I think this is what the back of the Homestead Frontier State Park that we're in, Frontier Homestead State Park. I think that's the combination of those two parks. This is just a general picture of the yard area to show you how some of the buildings are laid out, placed in the yard in the back. And then you have a jail, kind of interesting. And if you read the write-up, the last occupant of the jail cell, I assume this was actually in a building, would have been out in the open. The last occupant was actually a bear. One of the buildings in the back is this Pioneer Cabin, and the Pioneer Cabin has more in it than the other stuff, than the other cabins because it was designed for a family. So it's got tables and chairs. I don't think that bed would be real comfortable, but I've probably slept in one that was worse than that. And they've got a fair amount of the construction and how this was built, or how it how it served the purpose, the family that lived in it. And out in the back is the oven. And if you wanted to bake something in here, you had to be very careful because you were responsible for regulating temperature and for monitoring the product that was in the oven. There was a workshop cabin and had a number of tools in it. The number of tools spread over numerous eras of time was kind of interesting. And then had this Ellison snowmobile. This was inside. The Ellison snowmobile was interesting. I looked at this, and I mean, it was technology of the era, and still working in that 1930s, 1940s era. Only associated by subject matter. There's this snow tank. Now, I looked at the snow tank out there by Granway Perry, and I cannot figure out how it turns. I figure that it must pivot, swivel hip after the track, because the track is a single piece. Interesting device. And it does show the sled that snow tank was designed to pull. And then they had some fun. Pan for gold. We didn't pan for gold, but you could pan for gold. And we'll stay with snow for one more shot. Here's a single horse sleigh. Outdoor signage is tough. There should be some way to protect it or replace it conveniently. So here is the Jensen sawmill. And it looks relatively modern, considering I would think that engine would probably be the 1930s, big blade, large sled. So this was designed to take major pieces of wood. When you're dealing with outside signs, not only do you have weathering, but indoor signs as well as outdoor, you have lighting issues. And there was absolutely no way I could get a halfway decent shot of this particular sign without my hand being in the middle of it. But Cedar City was a mining town, is a mining town, and it is Iron County, Utah, for a reason. And they have this little mine sitting there showing you how tunnel mining was done. Back outside, and more rusting iron, rusting steel tools, equipment that was used in particular in farming. And this one here talks about the discs that are in the left-hand side. Those are what broke up the soil initially. The front portion of them was parallel with the track. The back portion, because it's a disc like a saucer, back portion is at an angle, and it rotates the dirt over. Then the second and the third items here break up the dirt when you've got them planted, and they keep the soil loose so that the roots from the plants that you plant can penetrate without having to fight Mother Nature too much. And if you're working with Mother Earth, you do have to move it. So they have some earth movers and scrapers on display here, and they're set up as along the side of the walkway. And they have a couple of things that I found rather unusual, but I understand why they're there and how they work. This fire engine is referred to as a chemical fire engine. You put water in it, you put a chemical in it, you keep the chemical and the water separated, you pull the fire engine to where the fire is. Hopefully the fire is small and near where you can get the fire engine to, and then you drop the chemical into the water and it starts a chemical reaction, and you get pressure and you can squirt water on the fire. One of the other unique pieces of equipment that I found at the museum, and I'm pretty sure that this is, I know what this is. I've seen forms of this before. This is an acetylene generator. You have carbon blocks in pellets. You have carbon pellets, and you have water, and you drop the pellets into the water. The water and the carbon react, and you get acetylene. Then you have a pressure regulator. You have a torch. You can do welding and cutting.
They have several interesting displays, again, in the back of the museum and the outside, and they're on how the Native Americans in the area built houses, hutches, living quarters, using the resources that they had available. It was pretty interesting to see how they used the material to support and insulate by covering them up with dirt. It kept the cool in during the winter, during the summer, and kept the heat in during the winter. Worked kind of nice, looked kind of interesting, and you use the resources that are available to you at the time. And the last item to show you as a sign out of this video, and I hope you enjoy it, we spent probably 2 hours there. It was the end of the day. For us, we were tired. The museum was closing, so we were kind of in a rush. This map showing paths and trails through the southwestern United States of America at the time. The museum was really interesting. I enjoyed it. I'd like to go back and spend some more time, get some better pictures of the items that are on display and some better pictures of the signage. They have a really interesting system with their signage. A lot of them have QR codes as well as telephone numbers. And if you dial the telephone number, it asks you what extension you want. You want extension 120, and that's the particular display you're sitting at. We didn't try it. My cell phone batteries were running out at the time. We didn't try it, but they have some really good signage. I wish they had some more. I wish some of the signage were a little better maintained. Very good museum to visit. We really enjoyed it. Hope to go back.